catch is, you go in solo. The politically sensitive nature of the mission...
Hey parents, Carmine here with your video review of Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. This has been an outstanding request for a while that I've been delaying because of the amount of research I expected to need in order to understand it. I knew ahead of time that Metal Gear Solid is a kind of a crazy, difficult to follow series of names and events, so I spent literally hours of time researching the backstory. I tried to get the meat of every Metal Gear Solid game released so that I could give this game a fair shake. I learned about the far too many people named Boss and the far too many people named Snake, which somehow sometimes overlapped. I learned about the organizations named Fox and organizations named XOF. I learned about the crazy fourth wall breaking battles and ultimately was extremely excited for what Ground Zeroes had in store. Ground Zeroes is a single mission with a few side missions that all take place in the same military base. I had a serious internal debate about doing a video review for this at all, since after completing it in about 2 hours, I realized it's not a game, it's a demo. However, since this is technically the first PS4 game I have played, and since it was a request that I promised to fulfill, here we go. Violence is the most prominent factor in Ground Zeroes, but it's important to understand that the violence breaks down into 3 different types: non-lethal, lethal, and cutscenes. Non-lethal violence is extremely mild and never involves blood. The player can shoot tranquilizer darts at enemies or grab enemies and knock them out. The game encourages using this method by subtracting points for lethal violence, but this method can get a bit tedious for anyone who isn't a fan of stealth combat. Lethal violence is very similar to non-lethal violence, but with a bit more blood. Shots from any weapon except the tranquilizer pistol will result in a small amount of blood that may pool on the ground but can disappear once the player leaves the area. The player can also grab enemies and kill them instead of knocking them out. In this case, Solid Snake takes out a knife and drives it into the enemy's chest. It's a quick animation that results in some blood, but it's often obscured by the camera angles and other objects. Cutscene violence is a whole different kind of animal. Blood in cutscenes is relatively infrequent, but can be more noticeable when present. However, there were a few additional sequences that significantly increased the violence rating in this game. For example, in one cutscene it is discovered that one of the prisoners has a bomb sewed into her stomach. The characters then need to open her up and remove the bomb while on a helicopter. This involves exposing and sifting through all of her internal organs. It's a pretty graphic scene. Substance use plays an extremely minor role. The tranquilizer darts were the most obvious substance in the game, but the sleeping agent's exact scientific makeup is never discussed. Additionally, once the player finishes the campaign, Snake can be seen smoking a cigar in the main menu. Excluding the content in the in-game audio logs, sexuality is very minor. It turns out that the bomb-carrying prisoner had a second bomb, which the dialogue heavily implies is implanted in her lady parts or some other unmentionable region. I debated heavily whether this should even be included in the sexuality section, but ultimately I believe it is worth mentioning if nothing else. Unfortunately, the designers of the game couldn't end it here. There are a number of audio logs that the player can find while playing this game. At least one of these logs includes a section where an underage male prisoner is forced to rape a female prisoner. The audio log is designed to give some backstory and show the sadistic nature of the antagonist, but the entire thing is extremely poorly designed. The voice acting is terrible, the audio log is uninteresting, and the game already does a decent job of showing how horrific the antagonist treats his prisoners. This seems to have been casually thrown in without giving any thought about the significance of the content. While the audio log was not nearly as bad as I was led to believe, it does not give me hope for the writing in the full Metal Gear Solid 5 game due to come out soon.
Either you take her now, or you're strung up next.
Don't worry, Chico.
No.
That's it. You know, look just like...
If you're considering buying this game, I would recommend watching Angry Joe's review first, since it discusses a lot of my problems. I would have rated this game a younger age, but the rape audio log forced me to increase the age slightly. However, because the audio log can be difficult to find and is overall pretty dull, we gave this game a recommended age of 14 years old. For the full written review, including the extra categories, log on to SideStoryGames.com.